You're watching the most exciting game you will ever see on your TV set.
Shh, there's something in here. Watch this.
A spring, a marvelous thing. Everyone knows it's Slinky.
Growing up in the 1970s certainly had its sweet and bitter taste. From the breakup of the Beatles to the premiere of iconic movies like Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, whether you identify as a baby boomer or as Gen X, these 70s memories will stir nostalgia and evoke feelings. So if you grew up in the 1970s, you remember this.
Introducing the new windmill shag carpet from Sears. It's baby-proof, it's dog-proof, and it's pleasure-proof.
Shag Carpets. These were one of the major interior highlights of almost every home in the 1970s. Thick and incredibly heavy and high-grade wool yarn fabrics covered the floors of many homes. These fabrics were usually a variety of colors: harvest gold, rust orange, sky blue, and avocado, which worked pretty well with rustic interiors. The fuzzy material was rather gentle on feet and quite comfy to lie on, and needless to say, these olden aesthetics are no longer used today, unless some clingy old-timer decided to acquire retro furnishing.
The Pet Rock, introduced in 1975, was billed as the 70s alternative to Man's Best Friend.
Pet rocks. Children loved to sit on shag carpets and play with their pet rocks. The 70s were so wild that with $4, you could get yourself a smooth little pet rock, which you could animate with a pair of googly eyes and lips. You could plan activities with your pet rock, like going for a walk, just not before Rocky had his morning coffee. Let's say it could be a bit of a boulder when upset.
You can choose tennis, or hockey, handball,
Pong. When you got tired of playing fetch with your pet rock, you probably indulged in an exciting and stimulating game of Pong. The simple arcade game swept the 70s into a frenzy. Admittedly, it does look a little empty. It doesn't have a whole lot of complex graphics and pictures, but it was enough to keep players on their toes with their hearts in their mouths at the arcade or on their home console. The game consists of two opposing sides represented with their individual paddles and a ball which was struck back and forth. Gaming has since evolved to the more realistic human characters with extremely broad storylines, and Pong, however, will remain in the records as a nostalgic memory of when games were in their infancy. Are you familiar with sea monkeys or the magic rings that show your emotions? Well, stick with us to find out more.
The Panasonic Dynamite 8 that plays 8-track cartridges.
8-track tape. While arcade games were a major element of the 1970s, the thing that defined this period in time was music. It was all about musical legends and icons, and it didn't matter what the genre was. Any music that made it onto an 8-track tape was certainly worth collecting and listening to. If you thought VHS and cassette tapes were old, 8-track tapes were the main pioneers of music storage before their predecessors. Car manufacturers began to incorporate 8-track tape players into new models of their vehicles, allowing you to entertain yourself and your date while driving through town.
Whether or not their president's a crook, well, I'm not a crook. I've earned everything I've got.
Watergate scandal. If you weren't too busy listening to music, you probably caught wind of the Watergate scandal that led to the resignation of President Richard Nixon. The scandal comprised of a series of controversies and illicit conduct by Nixon's aides, which included unauthorized investigations and misuse of office. The Watergate scandal was in every newspaper and on the lips of everyone who read them. Regardless of subjective opinion, watching Richard Nixon on the news as he exited the White House was a moment that left an incredible memory in history.
Form a family, that's the way we all became the Brady Bunch.
The Brady Bunch. Despite the chaos and scandals that riddled the news, from Watergate to conflicts and economic turmoil, the entertainment industry remained dedicated to thrilling the general public, with the most exciting and entertaining shows of all time. Classics like Happy Days, MASH, and The Jeffersons had brought color, excitement, and joy to the hearts of many, and one such show was The Brady Bunch. This dynamic family sitcom consisted of a large family comprised of 3 girls and boys, constantly engaging in sibling rivalry and shenanigans, as well as their widowed parents who brought their family together to form a home of dysfunction. The family-friendly humor and catchy square picture intro theme made this show quite irresistible.
Nothing says 70s fashion quite like the bell-bottom. The flared trousers dominated the decade.
Bell-bottom jeans. When watching the shows from the 1970s, you could easily spot the trends in their attire, and one major outfit that was rocked by both men and women were bell-bottom jeans. This apparel was quite famously worn in the 60s, however, it returned in the 70s, and they even have a song about it called Bell-Bottom Blues by Derek and the Dominoes. These denim-made jeans were usually bright satin polyester and bright cotton, flared from the knee to the ankle, with the bottom openings as wide as 20 inches. It can be said that the 70s came with stellar fashion trends that had ushered in rock music, and it wasn't only worn by hippies and bohemians. Bell-bottom jeans were a huge fashion trend that were worn across the entire entertainment industry by the likes of David Bowie, Elvis Presley, Johnny Carson, and of course, John Travolta.
After many years, the original Sea Monkeys are back. Bring them to life. All you need is water. Add the Sea Monkeys eggs.
Sea Monkeys. Besides fashion, another trend that seemed more like magic than a natural occurrence was sea monkeys. These mystical amphibious beings came to life when submerged in water. Children bought them from the store and couldn't wait to get home and begin nurturing their sea monkeys. But how real were the creatures? Did they really exist, or was it some kind of strategy by adults to keep kids grounded with activities? The creatures were on comic books, television, and various platforms, and were called instant pets because the anthropomorphic creatures came to life when placed inside of a plastic tank that came with the package. The reality of where sea monkeys came from is as strange as fiction. The kit came with a small plastic tank and 3 sachets of feed. The instructions were simple: add 12 ounces of water to the tank and then empty the sachets in at specific intervals. In just 24 hours, you would see baby sea monkeys swimming around. This trick captivated the minds of small children around the world for more than half a century, when in reality, the sea monkeys were actually brine shrimp, whose eggs had been well preserved and marketed in a small kit as an instant pet for children. These aquatic crustaceans survived in salty water, which would explain the salt that came with the sachet. They could survive long days on the shelf without water because of a process of cryptobiosis, which allows eggs from the female to survive for quite a long time and still be able to hatch when they find their way into the water. Regardless of the process, the sea monkeys were an absolute spectacle and a great source of entertainment for children.
I bet you want a sun camera for Christmas. Well, ask for it. You won't break anyone. It's only $39.95. It's the first Christmas you can get one for that.
Polaroid cameras. With so many memorable moments in the 1970s, it was easy to miss moments that were breathtaking, but thanks to the portable Polaroid camera, you could easily take pictures that were developed instantly. Unlike the previous models that existed in the 1960s that were black and white, the new models often featured various colors, and people would shake the picture to make it develop faster. These Polaroid cameras were fun and people carried them everywhere they went. However, sales of the camera began to decline in 1979 as a brand new kind of technology entered the market, the video camera. Other models began to surface until the age of digital cameras, and today we use our Android and Apple phones to capture those special moments.
Radio Shack has the hottest thing on wheels today, realistic two-way CB radio.
The CB radio. Imagine cruising in a vehicle with your friends and capturing moments on your Polaroid camera, but then you miss your bearings or get a flat tire in an isolated area with poor reception. If you were in the 1970s, chances are you would own a Citizen Band radio, popularly referred to as the CB. This piece of mobile radio equipment would be quite useful for short-distance communication. With the CB radio, you could reach out in many directions to friends, employers, and others, and no matter the condition, the radio was always reachable, even in the woods, the highlands, and isolated areas. The analog CB radio used a frequency of 27 megahertz and also broadcast a half-duplex transmission, meaning that when in use you could talk from your end and an infinite number of people could hear you from their transceivers. It's no wonder the CB radio is popularly used by truckers who are always on the road in every condition, and they even made up their own lingo to communicate with one another.
I was made for loving you, baby.
disco ball. Some might say that disco had saved the world. It could be regarded too as the most influential musical movement, with a blend of cultures that popularized social dancing and paved the way for a wide variety of freeform. It brought about the hallowed position of music keepers, who were referred to as DJs, on whose tables remixes were invented. But no disco would ever be complete without the disco ball. The massive spherical decorative ball, which was covered in bits of mirrored facets that made it shimmer, would be usually dangled from the ceiling of the club and reflected flashy balls of light that illuminated the entire room.
Well, a balsam. It's the original balsam. In just 1 minute, it makes your hair strong, shiny, and easy to comb.
Farrah Fawcett's hairstyle. The glamour of the 1970s was not only restricted to parties, it was also the looks and the appearance. As far as Hollywood was concerned, there were very few hairstyles as iconic and sexy as the timeless allure of Farrah Fawcett's blowout style. Farrah Fawcett was the first-generation star of Charlie's Angels, who quickly became popular for her voluminous and feathery curls. The look became the standard for physical attraction and beauty in the 70s, and the modern age has endless varieties of hairstyles that can't be traced to a single person. But the Farrah Fawcett hairstyle will always have a place of familiarity and sentiment in our hearts.
You're looking at a rotary telephone. This is not brand new, this is vintage.
Rotary phones. Now let's talk about communication. The 1970s were a much different time, and the technology of phones was very much in its infancy. Back in the day, rotary phones could be found in homes and offices and were the great symbol of communication of the era. In contrast to modern phones, rotary phones were only used to make calls and nothing else, made up of a mechanism which allowed the operator to turn dials which sent clicks or pulses that corresponded to the number dialed. The rotary phone was a most fascinating device in the 70s and would be an upgrade from the previous design that required a human operator standing as a middleman and directing connections from caller to receiver. And the rotary phone was regarded as the future of communication. Today, phones have transcended the confinements of rotary dials, spiral wire attachments, and other limitations. And in place of rotary dials, we have touch screens for smoother navigation. Modern phones are not only for calls, but also represent a lot more, as their functions cut across business, entertainment, social media, and other essentials.
I'm just a bill, yes, I'm only a bill, and I'm sitting here on Capitol Hill.
Schoolhouse Rock. The Saturday morning cartoons were the highlight of every child's weekend because they provided a long line of great cartoon shows like Johnny Quest, Scooby-Doo, and The Perils of Penelope Pitstop. However, there was one show that always kept people glued to the screen of their television, and that was Schoolhouse Rock. It was especially memorable because it had subtle life lessons about calculations, how to speak to people, scientific facts, and even political news. You would bob your head up and down to the catchy music and laugh to its classic humor, and those who enjoyed the show enjoyed tunes like the classic Conjunction Junction.
Cast a spell with products by Lava Simplex. We've got emotion for every emotion.
Lava lamp. Home decor was another major aspect of the 1970s that filled the home with the most breathtaking of elements, and one such decorative vessel was the lava lamp. This ornamental lamp was invented in the 60s, but got its popularity in the 70s for its beauty, luminescence, and blending of colors. It consisted of globules of colored wax inside of an aesthetic glass which was full of translucent liquid and a bulb at the base. As the liquid got warmer, the buoyancy of the wax increased, causing it to float, but as the light goes off and the liquid cools, the wax then drops back to the bottom of the container. This enthralling halogen lamp was quite popular with hippies and those who were associated with the cannabis culture of the time, though they generally improved home and office aesthetics as well. It was certainly the sort of decorative lamp that you would find in the homes of famous people or clubs in classy locations.
And it's a Swanson fried chicken dinner. That's some value. Swanson can change your ideas about today's high food prices.
TV dinners. With a dimly lit room, it was the perfect atmosphere for the best dining experience, and what better way to fill that craving than with a TV dinner? a set of pre-packaged frozen meals stored in partitioned aluminum trays. These delicious delights were wrapped for effective storage and warming convenience. They began with the Swanson brand in the 1950s and slowly transformed the dinner experience of millions. The menu consisted of a broad spectrum of tastes to accommodate the ever-changing American dietary diversity. As the years would go on, so did innovations of microwavable dinners to meet the needs of evolving palates, bigger appetites, and health enthusiasts alike. Whether it was the extra-large chicken dinners for the obsessive eater or vegan meals for the calorie counter, these hearty meals tackled the most important issue of the busy lives of people, which was having delicious meals to eat daily while spending less time slaving over a stove.
It's Slinky, for fun it's a wonderful toy.
The Slinky. Right after a good meal, children would engage in all kinds of entertainment and activity, but none would be quite as thrilling as the Slinky. You may have heard of or even seen the spring toy that was made out of metal or colorful plastic. The spring would move when dropped on the floor, and children played a popular game in the 70s where they would let it down from the top of the stairs and it would topple down end over end down the stairs until it got to the bottom, where it would stop after achieving equilibrium. The motion of the Slinky was purely based on the laws of momentum and gravity, but to children, it was a magical spring and there was nothing short of fun. Slinkies were invented in the 40s and only gained publicity in the 50s, but they became extremely popular in the 1970s, where for $5, a child could have all the fun they wished for. And Slinkies became a notable part of the 70s that brought joy to children everywhere.
The beautifully crafted multicolor mood ring reveals your subconscious feelings in a myriad of breathtaking color.
The mood ring. If toys weren't enough to lift your mood, well, it certainly showed on your mood ring. The mood ring was a genius fashion accessory that displayed a certain color depending on the mood that you were in. Inexplicably, the piece of jewelry could assess your emotional state and emit a color that gave it away. An amber color meant that you were uneasy and anxious. Blue meant that you were in a calm state, and black would get people taking a few steps back because it meant that you were about to be upset. It was never really confirmed how real the predictions were. Would the mood ring actually read your mood, or was it simply all coincidence? The world may never know. There's one thing that can always brighten your day, and that's none other than video games.
With the 2600 from Atari, still under $50, but wait, there's more.
The Atari 2600. Before we had the sounds of Sega, the noise of Nintendo, and the privilege of PlayStation, along with the excitement of the Xbox, we first had the Atari 2600 home gaming console. It was introduced to the market in 1975 with its addictive tennis game Pong. It wasn't the first video game ever made, but it was certainly the first which allowed players to interchange game cartridges when they wanted to play a different game. Unlike the Magnavox Odyssey, which was the first ever, Atari was a much more developed system with colorful graphics and better sound than its predecessors. It supported a wide variety of games that came in separate cartridges. From Pac-Man to Space Invaders to other heart-wrenching combat games, Atari home gaming took the industry by surprise. It was no surprise that Americans had spent billions of dollars in a single year on Atari gaming products just to get the newest releases. The 2600 was America's favorite for at least 15 years before falling to the competing power of modern gaming systems and products. Other brands began to make console games and computer games, and today there are a plethora of products that also exist on other platforms, inclusive of phones, tablets, iPads, computers, and more. The Atari 2600 stands no chance in this era, but it holds a special place in everyone's hearts, especially if you lived during the time of the single joystick pad. Though the games do not even compare to what we have today, they represent the history and development of gaming technology from the bottom to the precipice of ingenuity. Which of these 70s memories do you relate with the most, and how many of these experiences can you recall? Let me know in the comments down below, and if you have any 70s toys and interior elements, tell me all about them, because I'd love to hear about your 70s experience. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.